We
I
are
think it's an
live.
owl, not a falcon, actually.
It is now. We are live.
Okay. We are live.
We are live.
But we have 3 more minutes.
Oh, that's correct.
27 is accurate.
Thank you, Mike. That is the owl, it's the owl crow. Aaron Osborne used to call it the albatross.
Do the printouts match what's on the drive?
Yes.
Okay.
Nothing has changed. Oh, Tim.
Coming?
Yes, I see him coming.
Okay. Can you put on my,
He might.
can you put on my meeting for tomorrow? To go over, some things from the union meeting. One is scripts for clerical staff, and 2 is,
Two is.
wild tree situation, party coverage, and 3 is,
Something covered.
party.
Party, yeah.
And then 3rd is about, impact voting.
You mean our meeting, right? Just you and I, John? That meeting that you're talking about? Okay, let's sit here.
Almost. Right, we're not allowed to start early. That would be a violation of open meeting law.
Correct.
Because it doesn't follow the posting.
Correct. You can start later, you can start as late as you want. You can start early.
See, overseas, when everybody's on the airplane, they take off early, even 15, 20 minutes early.
Well, hey, once everybody's there,
Right, why not? But not here. They sit there, gotta wait till the time.
well, we don't know who will be here. All right, we're live, right?
Yes.
Hello and welcome to Hampton-Wilburn Regional School District Policy Subcommittee meeting. It is April 9th, not August 9th, it's April 9th, 5:30 p.m. In attendance, I guess we'll do roll call for attendance. Rich,
Here,
Tim, and myself, I'm here, so we have a quorum. All right, why don't you lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance? Flag over there. Yeah, the flag's up here.
I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, first on the agenda, determination of honor roll status. I think this came from an inquiry that you had originally. Rich, do you want
Okay,
to summarize it for anyone?
Okay, summarizing is, this goes back decades, but in the olden days, with honor rolls, before computers, everybody just said, nice and easy, all A's you're in high honors, A's and B's you're in second honors, and nobody had to calculate anything. Once computers came out, most schools do it by averages. So what is the advantage of an average? And it goes way back to, in the day, when my daughter was at middle school, it was like decades and decades ago, and had like all 99s, but had an 89 in shop, and she claimed that none of the girls in the class could get a 90, nobody had A's. And so that kept her off the high honor roll for one teacher, one grade. If it's by average, one teacher, one grade can't keep you off if you've excelled. You could actually have the best, you could be all 99s and an 89 and have like a 98 average and not get in high honors, and some other kid with all 90s, which is significantly lower average, could be on high honors. So with computers, there's no work to do because you just press the button and it gives you the average. Now the real key with honor rolls is what would that average be? It's not 90, because obviously, normally for something like A high honors could be like a 93 with no grade less than a D plus or something like that. You really need to look at what percent you want to be on high honors and what percent you want to be on honors. That's really where it comes from, because it's subjective. Do you want everybody on high honors? You want everybody on honors? You want everybody to take the honor roll? What, how special should it be? And that's where you can determine what your approximate average is, because with grade inflation, things change year to year to year to year. All of a sudden, more and more kids start getting up there. So you're really looking to say, with a grade, what percent do you want to be? And then you go back and you can look at previous data and see what average you could have to do it. So the idea of an average, again, is not to keep kids off that just have one bad, one teacher they don't get along with. And it should still be something special. It should still be not everybody making it, but you pick an average, and then you can say no grade less than, and the second one could be, let's say, an average of 85 or higher. So whatever you come up with, you come up with. But when I look at, our customers in schools, the vast majority of schools do it by average. Hardly anybody does it anymore by all A's and B's. I tried looking online at some of the schools around here, and it was hard to actually find what they're using. I did find many that had, this is the average, like in East Long Meadow and things like that, to find it. So it's just a matter of thinking about, we're still back. There was a reason to do all A's, because it was easy at the time before computers automated figuring out averages. So that's just something to think about and something to go ahead. I was surprised we were still on the other way when I looked into it again. I said, I guess 30 years ago, they must have moved by now, and they didn't.
Okay. So, Steve, can you summarize for me, what do we actually do right now for that?
Yeah, our current policy is B's are higher, you're on the honor roll. All A's are higher, you're on high honor roll. And I talked to a couple principals locally today to find out what they're doing, and it's pretty similar. I think the other thing too is, I think we, and I say we, people of my age, just count myself in there, might have a distorted impression of how much honor roll means. Like, college applications don't even ask, were you on the honor roll, how many times were you on the, it has really kind of, go down, whether or not you're a member of NHS, which includes scholarship as one of the 4 tenements is important. But really what's more important is the types of courses that students are taking, the level, whether it's honors, AP, or college now, course out of state. Those things are more important than sophomore, spring, term 3, did you make the honor roll, and what level of honor roll did you make? I think I do understand the philosophy behind average versus what you got in a particular term. However, that also pits, it starts to pit courses against courses and content against content. So in terms of, I got a 99 in my phys ed class, and that's going to help average the 78 I got in my physics class. So then you start to get into, okay, if we're going to do an average, do we exclude certain contents? And it gets more and more things like that. So my opinion is the way that we have it now seems consistent with local districts, and I don't know that many, if I went around and asked students, hey, do you honor roll? They would be like, Mr. Hale, I don't even look at that. I'm focused on my GPA and where I might want to go to school and those kinds of things.
I wasn't even thinking in terms of going to college. Some kids just do it because they want to do it, to say, hey, I made honor roll, I made high, especially at the middle school level, where some of that, they're doing it just for see the name in the paper and the pride of doing it. One thing I really used to appreciate here is you used to have the Renaissance program. I used to tout that kids that made high honors got a card that could get them a discount at certain, places. And so now you got some, rewarding people for academic excellence. I thought that was a great idea. you know, you have like a 10% discount for this and a 5% discount for that. You get the businesses to buy in, and it's something to award. That was a great idea. I don't know why that went, I haven't, is it still around, or?
Yeah.
Oh, it is, okay, because I haven't seen it publicized much, you know, and things like that, so. Anyway, I was thinking in terms of, you know, not for college at all, just for the honor of being on an honor roll. And by the way, when you do it, you wouldn't take a 70 with a 90, you'd say no grade less than, and by the way, the software has the ability to say no grade less than in a minor course or a major course. So you could actually sit there, what schools do is you can say the average is 93, you can have, you know, at most one grade between an 85 and a 90 in a minor course, otherwise all the majors have to be above, you know, to be counted to be a 90. It's all kinds of different things you can do, but if nobody really cares. I just thought back in the day, that one teacher, if some kid wants the pride of being on the high honors, and there's just a gym class that isn't gonna give them an A, that kept them off, but the average you wouldn't, but certainly you wouldn't say a 70. You'd say something like no grade less than a B+. Throw it out there.
That has been your concern from the beginning, you know, a single bad performance or a single.
Not even bad, 89 is not a bad performance, but just,
Are you aware of any schemes that protect kids from, like, maybe just one bad grade?
Well, I mean, I think a lot of what happens these days is more about the learning process and how we approach things. Like, a lot of our math teachers do what's called test corrections.
Mhm.
So I take a test, I get a certain score, and then the teacher says, okay, I want you to use this as a learning tool to go look at the ones you got wrong, figure out either by yourself, with a peer, how to do them right, correct them, and then that helps their overall score. So there's things like that, there's things like after-school help that our kids access to, you know, raise their performance. There's a lot of English is all about revision rather than I have an essay due on Friday, here's my essay, I got a D, okay, that's the end of that essay. No, it's more about the process. Let's look at your topic sentence, let's grade that. Let's grade your outline for the paper. Let's grade the first draft. Let's grade the second draft. Now let's get to the published point. So it's more about process than it is about one particular assessment.
in
I
this
have a
case,
question. So when a kid's in an AP or an honors class, like, I know that extra points get added for the average to the GPA. Are they like bumped up half a grade or or a full letter grade when it's considered their grades for honor roll or high honor roll as well?
We don't do that for honor roll or high honor roll. We just do that for GPA. A B in an AP class would be like averaging an A in the GPA.
Mm-hmm.
But we don't go through and do it for the honor roll. We just go strict A's and B's.
again, that does have somebody who's sitting there saying, I need to be in an honor roll, which again, you're right, in terms about the, you know, what matters for college, is that you said, I'm not gonna take this class because I want to be, you know, have a higher GPA. But going back to the other one, I was thinking in middle school, there was no amount of extra work that was gonna get somebody a 90 in shop, you know, that, from what you already had. And that's kind of where this goes back to. I'm not just in terms of thinking of high school, thinking of other levels, like the middle school levels. And there was, I can come back for extra help, I can do this and this, nothing's gonna get you 90, you know, in shop for whatever method they're just grading. So that's kind of where some of that comes from, kids that really want to be on the honor roll.
Can I gently push back?
Yeah, I mean, I'm fine either way. So.
I don't think we should be writing policy
I don't think we
in
should.
2025 based on one experience.
No, not at all, but this is generally what's happened in terms of, you know, looking at what schools, I know a few here that you might have looked at, but in the ones that I've, most of the experience I've had, most of the stuff we've done has been in using averages. So again, just throwing something out there, it does make a difference in some of those cases. And there's a lot of things to it, grading. I mean, there's so many, one of the things that is worth looking at, you know, which we used to look at a long time ago, would be teachers that teach the same course, exact same course, and you sit there and say, if you're in this, that if you look over time, you can see what the average grade is for, let's say, this teacher that teaches chemistry, and this is chemistry, because one year you might have the smart kids, or less smart kids. But certainly, I remember when I was on Meadow, we figured over here, this physics teacher, the average grade was like a 79, the other one was like a 89. And so just by the luck of the draw, you knew this kid's GPA was gonna be a whole lot higher than kids that ended up getting in that teacher. So you can look at, over time, average grades, and I always said principals should go to teachers and say, look, you guys are teaching the same stuff, the same thing, this is your average grade for the last 5 years, this is your average grade for the last 5 years, you guys gotta come somewhere in the middle there. You know, it's just not right to be over here. So there's so many things you can look at in terms of grading, in terms of statistics, in terms of data, and then of course, what is a grade? Because I've always argued with teachers in terms of the fact that they say, we're gonna make our things harder or easier because a 90 is, you know, an A, or that's just all arbitrary, as you know. That a teacher can give easy questions on a test and hard questions on a test, and raise everybody's average, lowers everybody's average. So, you know, I've had those arguments. Teachers say 90 is an A and that's it, I can't do anything about it. You know, it's just stuck there. But it's really all arbitrary as to what a grade really is. And that's beyond the discussion here, but it's just,
Well, I mean, a
there's
lot of things
there.
factor into it. I mean, the expertise of the teacher factors
Yeah.
into that as to what they think is, and their experience, right? They've taught the same thing to, over the years, the students and stuff,
Yeah.
so. I mean, certainly if we're in accordance with what our comparable high schools are in the area, personally, I don't think I'd look for us to change it. If the kids really cared about it a lot, I might say, well, maybe we give a hat tip to kids who are in AP classes so that, you know, they might not, you know, but since the kids don't really care about it, I mean, it would just cause trouble to change it. So
yeah, no, I agree with that.
I'm not really in favor.
And that is possible too, to sit there, it's another setting that says, do you want to count grades with the bump for AP when figuring out honor rolls? So all that's in software settings to see how schools do things. And, you know, so many schools think that, when you look at giant, I used to have rooms full of schools, hundreds of schools, would ask, who does it this way, who does it that way? And most schools think it's the only way to do it. For example, we're on letter grades. But I'd say, if you look at the whole country, over half the schools by far use number grades. And so they have actually sent to schools, your average is 93 or 92, whatever it is. They don't say A's and B's and C's. Then the schools that use letter grades, some of them say it's gotta be this way, we can't do the numbers, that's what colleges require. And they don't. You know,
I gotta tell you, Rich, I just went through the college process with my fourth kid, and I'm starting to think that the colleges don't care about the grades at all. They seem to be very interested in looking at exactly what courses the kids took.
yes.
And in particular, they seem to be focusing in on, they want to know what courses were available and what the kid chose.
Yeah.
So in other words, if you had the opportunity to take calculus, but you didn't, you know, they look at that and they're like, oh, well, they didn't really challenge themselves, you know, maybe this is not the place for them kind of thing. I mean, that's the impression I've gotten. I can't tell you how many interviews and presentations I've seen from college admissions counselors at this point. But I mean, you know, it's, I don't know, 4 kids, at least 5 visits per kid. I mean, I think I'm starting to get up to expert status.
My father was on the admittance committee at MIT. You know, as a head of the electrical engineering department, they had different people join the committee and be responsible for taking the kids in. And he said that, number one, all the stuff the colleges, the high schools give them in terms of ranking and all that, they throw that away and they throw in their own system. And they said this, almost everybody does that. So they don't, because our grades are so varying, do so many things, they just have to take what they have, the courses that they know, what the history is, and put it in their own system. But they also would, which was interesting, they did a lot of testing. They would say, we're gonna look and see, for this year's class, we're gonna go focus more on, maybe a little more on extracurricular or something, to see if we get a whole person, and 4 years later, we're gonna see how we actually did. So each year, they actually had a theme as to what they would try to, you know, look at a little differently, and then measure that for you, because that's what MIT would do, they're always measuring the statistics and things, you know, 4 years later, how that class turned out. But talking to different, you know, I just have so many high school guidance counselors that sit there and say, this is how colleges make us send it in. This is what we have to do. We have to convert to a 4-point scale. We have to this, and all that's not true, because certain schools, you know, send it in different ways, and the colleges basically, every time I talk to a college admissions officer, it's we do our own thing, put it on our own computer, we put our own weighting system, all this stuff for extra points for that. We just don't even want to listen to schools, because you wouldn't believe, especially the private schools, how they play the game. And a couple things, just a couple stories would be, one, we have, if somebody's tied 2 kids are tied for first in the class, next kid's third, right? But this school says, no, the next kid should be second. So I said, okay, 2 kids are tied, or 3 kids are tied for first, the next kid's second. I said, if you have lots of ties, every single kid, you have 100 kids in your class, they can all be in the top half of the class. And they said, exactly, our kids are so good, we want everybody in the top half.
Oh, good God.
So that was a true comment, you know, how they play the games. Then a lot of other guidance counselors, one school they took the number grade of an average kid at like an 84, and they stuck a 3 in front of it and sent the kid at a 3.84. They sent that to the colleges. And thinking the colleges aren't going to figure this out, you know, but they're trying to help their kids in a lot of ways. And that's one thing that schools should know, is that you have guidance departments all over playing games. And sometimes guidance counselors at public schools are more, you know, right up front. You know, they're going to do they're going to do what's right. Whereas a lot of the private schools, they try in every last little game to get their kids an advantage. So that's just also something when you look at the big picture.
All right,
Like
you
it's-
okay if we, you okay if we move
You
on?
I'm fine.
50% of your
I'm
kids
fine.
in top. You should have taken statistics instead of calculus.
Yeah, that's right. That's all right.
Anyway, thank you for bringing it up.
Thank you.
I said,
Thank
just worth thinking about it. So.
All right, next on our agenda, EEA, Student Transportation Services. I appreciated your notes on this, John.
Thank you.
So I guess my question reviewing this and the changes to it, I noticed in the policy, it's got bus contractors, taxi contractors. We currently use only the collaborative?
Correct. Well, no, we use the collaborative for our regular ed transportation and a lot of our special ed transportation. And then we have other contractors that we use for some of our special ed transportation.
Okay, all right, so there are other contractors, okay. So, now, my other question was, I thought it was reasonable the way that, you know, you were kind of pointing us towards providing transportation to everybody who's, well, it's depending on age, right? So 1 mile from the school for grades 1 to 3, and then 1.5 miles from the school for grades 4 to 6, and then 2 miles from the school for 7 to 12. I think this is what we're currently doing.
No, the yellow is new.
No, but what are we doing in practice in terms of what kids are getting rides?
Right now, we have many students who are under the 1.5 mile who are getting the rides. When this group met last year, we talked about reducing the transportation eligibility to a mile.
Yes, I remember that.
Yes.
Okay. Okay, so, all right, so it's gonna be every kindergartner, and then down to a mile. Now, the high school is longer, 2 miles.
Mhm.
Are we allowed to do that? Because I thought we were required to if it was over 1.5 miles.
No, your transportation reimbursement only applies if they live more than 1.5 miles.
Oh, so they don't actually tell you what to do?
Well, you have to provide it for students who are more than 1.5 miles.
Okay.
And you get reimbursement for students who are more than 1.5 miles. You can provide it for students under that, and you don't get reimbursement for the students who are under that.
So that's what we would be doing for grades 1 to 3.
Correct.
But we,
For some of them, I mean, some of them will still be more than
Yeah, yeah,
1.5 miles in those
Yes.
grades.
so then why are we at 2 miles for the high school?
They're older. Walk longer rides.
And it's not just high school. Based on the grades, it changes in middle school.
Mhm.
So a kid who rides the bus for 6th grade might not get to ride the bus for 7th grade.
Possibly.
6 is middle school, 6 and 8 is middle school.
Right. So their first year in the middle school, they might be on the bus, and then
Oh, right.
they're not gonna be on the bus. So how many kids are gonna, if we do this, how many kids won't be on the bus, are gonna get kicked off?
I don't know.
I don't know, we have to.
It would be the
share-
students living between 1 and 1.5 miles who are in grade 7, or in
Right.
grades 4 through 6, and then who are between 1.5 and 2 for 7 through 12.
And our current cutoff again is?
current cutoff is 1 mile, we changed it to 1 mile across the board last year.
We changed it to 1 mile across the board last year. So you wanna, so this would be bringing it up to 1.5 miles from 4 to 6, and then 2 miles for 7 to 12. Are you against 7 to 12 being 1.5 miles?
No, these are just the recommended mileages from the MASC.
Oh, they are.
Mhm.
What about, I see you say unless it's hazardous defined as no sidewalk?
That is one of the conditions that will make it hazardous. Sometimes,
We have very few, almost all the roads in town do not have sidewalks.
That's the point.
correct, which is why we transport a lot of students who are not reimbursed for it.
Okay.
Yeah.
And I would consider Stony Hill hazardous, and the schools are on, two
Yes,
of the schools are on that road. I would
But they
consider
do have a
Main
sidewalk.
Street hazardous, and a few of our schools are on that road. Sewell Road, I think, is the only road I would consider not hazardous.
Well,
But they don't have a sidewalk.
we don't have a sidewalk.
But they don't have a sidewalk, so
We don't have
that
a
makes it
sidewalk.
hazardous anyway.
I mean, I say like a dead-end street without a sidewalk would not be hazardous, if that's what we're applying to get to the schools. It seems like almost every place would be hazardous.
So,
That's
Oh.
why there are so many stops all around town, you know. I have heard the frustrations of people who are behind buses that are stopping every, 50 yards. But it's because those kids are on routes that have been deemed hazardous, so they can't go to a gathering point.
okay, so there are gathering points in the routes.
There are, but not very many.
But to your
But not
point,
right.
Stony Hill, like, if you're behind somebody on a bus, Stony Hill, they are stopping almost at every door because of the nature of the street. The road is,
I'm scared to even drive down that road, never mind.
If they don't tell
They had
bus
to decide of
drivers
it to get on a bus.
every
So-
like 15 minutes pull over and let the cars pass, that's not an instruction, right?
our drivers, I have seen them do that, Rich. I have seen them do it.
So obviously, I'm concerned we're going to have some irate families, because if we do this as recommended by the MASC, some kids who are bused are gonna be kicked off.
Possibly, if they're on a safe route to walk and they're,
Grades 4 to 12, there's gonna be kids that are kicked off, because right now we're doing from 1 mile
right,
and longer. And 4 to 6 is gonna go to 1.5 miles, and 7 to 12 is gonna go to 2 miles.
Where do we have 2 miles of sidewalks?
Huh?
So, are there even routes that are 2 miles of
We
sidewalks?
don't have sidewalks.
Right.
Every year, the FinCom talks about sidewalks, and guess what, they never get to them. And if you ask them about it, they'll probably blame us. So, I don't know,
I
I'm
think
kind of,
any parent can get it overridden by claiming it's hazardous, without the sidewalks. So it doesn't even matter.
so what did we decide, so you walk at 3 miles per hour, right? So a 1 mile walk is 20-minute walk. Walking a mile, that's about a 20-minute walk.
For kids, it's faster.
Well, but
But
depending on the age of these
yeah.
kids, they're not gonna be doing it alone. To school, the parents, well, then the parents might be driving and stuff, and that's the other potential impact. More parents may be driving their kids, and we already have too many driving and dropping off, right?
I think the main driver, that's kind of funny. The main driver right now is
It's the poor buses.
unreliability of the buses.
So. I don't know, I'm a bit of a softy, Rich. I mean, part of me wants to make all of these just 1 mile and leave it the way it was. But I can be a bit of a softy, so, I don't know, what are your thoughts? It's just the two of us here.
Yeah.
And this is one of those things that is like,
I mean,
it's gonna have real world impact.
It is.
Potentially for 2 or 3 families. Let's be honest, it's gonna affect 2 or 3 families maybe.
who probably could claim that they don't have a sidewalk, so it's hazardous, they get picked up anyway. That's the thing,
Yes.
you don't know the statistics on that, how many routes really, I mean, almost everything would fall into hazardous unless it's a dead-end street,
Those are hazardous too, because many of them, the cul-de-sacs are not big enough for the buses to turn around. So if you're on a cul-de-sac, it's actually worse, you have to be picked up on the end of the street. most of them.
Most of you
I was
can't.
talking about the
I
walk,
know that because I used to live on
I was
Highway.
talking about the walking
Oh,
down
right.
this Dead Street.
Here's an idea for a softie. What if we made it 4 to 12, 1.5 miles per school? Then it would be starting it at the reimbursement mileage.
Okay. Okay. That's middle ground. And then still, if somebody's really upset, if it's, they think it's a horrible situation, they can call you and,
Correct. And they do.
And they do, that's what they do.
and they do.
We consult with the.
I guess that's another thing to consider, do you want those phone calls?
So we don't get reimbursed if it's hazardous, less than 2 miles, less than that?
Nope.
It's less than a mile and a half.
So they just say, walk and get killed, hit by a car.
What's that?
You're saying the state is saying,
The
The
state is not saying you should walk, the
Right,
state is just saying we won't pay for it.
correct.
right, that's,
Correct.
It's kind of like special education.
yes.
We're saying you should do it, but we're just not gonna pay for it all. So, okay, cool.
I agree.
All right, so we have the modifications that, okay, so I'm looking for, do you have any other questions on this one? EEAA? That was my only question on this one, 2 questions on this one. If not, I'm looking for a motion to accept EEAA with the amendment that John mentioned, making it 1.5 miles for grades 4 through 12.
I'll second that.
Okay, I guess.
Look, make it fast.
All right, all those in favor?
Aye.
All right, anyone opposed? Okay, ECAF, security cameras in schools. We had lots of interest in reading with this one.
Mhm.
The thingy that you had at the end of it. So the 2 versions, the red line version, so one's a clean version and the other one is a red line version?
So,
Is that what's going on there?
now, to take you back in time, this is a policy that we considered last year. It would be a new policy for the district, even though we've had security cameras in schools for a long time. The yellow, the reason it's all in yellow is because of the new. The reason that it didn't come out of the subcommittee last time is that one of the members wanted some language around parents' ability to view the video and wanted some, me to have an opportunity to consult with our attorney on that. So the red highlighted text here is some language that I pulled from policies from other districts that have addressed the problem of allowing parents to view the videotape. It's a problematic area because that videotape is actually a student record, and it's a student record not only for your student, but for anyone else who might be
Any
in the
students
video.
could be on it, right?
That's right. So the middle ground districts have found with that, which is consistent with the reading that you got, I think it was from OCR, or Department of Education, is allowing them to inspect the record, which is their
FERPA.
right.
FERPA, that's a
Yes.
cool acronym.
Is not the same as letting them possess the record. So we have language here that I've drawn from 2 other policies that talk about letting parents view the tape, which is what we do. And then the one that is struck out in red is language that I had brought in from other policies that our attorney would like to peel back. It was a little bit more expansive in talking about parents' right to view the video. What he left in there was basically language that doesn't talk about it being a right, but just saying that we will provide parents with the opportunity to inspect and review. And basically try to make it as simple as possible. So the recommendation would be to do all the yellow language and all the red language, except the red language that has strike-throughs in it.
Okay. So, what about, so the hypothetical situation, family has asked to view the video of the fight where their kid beat up some other kid,
Mhm.
okay? And so you bring them into your office, they say, okay, here you can view the video, and you go turn the video on for them to look, and they immediately whip out their phone and start recording what they're seeing on the screen.
Well, we'd stop the video, so they don't
Okay,
view
so
it by
this
themselves.
prohibits that.
Right,
That would count as, even if they're making the copy, that counts as
Correct.
a copy and it's,
Correct.
okay, okay. That's the only thing I was worried that you might need to make sure that we're covered for.
Yeah.
Because it kind of sounds like we will not provide them a copy, but we will also not allow them to make a copy.
correct.
Okay, cool. I have no issues with this.
So it seems
And it
just-
allows law enforcement to be involved when you guys deem that is necessary.
You're saying, looking at technology all over the world, like when you go walking in most of these other cities, they use, facial recognition, they can find you any place from any camera, whether it's in the Middle East, whether it's even in a lot of the European ones. Oh, they would find Mike, he just crossed the street over by the Roman Coliseum over there, from the whole city, all the cameras. And it seems like here, they don't have any problem with somebody picking people up off the street and throwing a blanket and sending them to El Salvador for prison, yet I guess in high school, you can't really record kids, and have recognition and do
Well, they're minors and
minors.
And you don't have the permission of their parents, so that can be a thing.
And we know who they are, so
Yes.
facial recognition doesn't.
It's finding people, I guess, it's having people, being on the lookout for somebody that you can sit there and say, okay, this kid's gonna be causing trouble, have it, there's so much more that could be done if it was allowable in terms of security.
So, I mean, the issues come about when there's behavior that
Yeah.
requires discipline, right? And the record is on the camera and,
You mentioned something about sound, that they can't record sound, I remember hearing this last year.
Sound is considered a more intrusive form of surveillance, so all of our cameras are just video.
It's also interesting.
if you're looking at them live, it's also silent. And the new camera system, if we ever get it,
Yeah, just the camera system.
it will be video only still.
Is that still law? I mean, it's law, you can't record or.
You need someone's permission to record, yeah. Was
Because they're
that
a
part
minor,
of the
just
problem
period.
with Watergate?
Well, I think there's a federal,
I think the mob too has a problem.
there's a federal wiretap law in Massachusetts, you have to have two-way consent for recording conversations, so I think that is the thing.
I'm using artificial intelligence to help me with my notes in the office now.
Alright.
And at the beginning of, if I'm gonna use it, I have to say, I'm using it, because even though it's not recording the audio, but the computer listens and then produces a transcript and then edits it and does a thing. It actually works surprisingly well, for what it is, so, but.
So what is it you have to say at the beginning?
I just say to the people, I said, I just want to let you know, I'm using artificial intelligence to help generate the note from our visit today, and, make sure that's okay with you, because I'm supposed to get their permission.
That reminds me, you were saying something just happened recently on a DESI call where they had to kick out an AI.
AI bot, making a transcript. Yep.
How did they know the AI was there?
Oh, because it comes on as a separate little box on Zoom.
Oh, because it was a Zoom.
Mhm. So you'll have the purchase, so they couldn't even identify who
Oh.
signed the bot on, because you signed the bot on and you signed your cell phone separate.
So they kicked off the bot without knowing which one of the participants had put it on.
Correct. And then let us all know, don't do that again.
Don't do it.
Let you all know, so nobody had to fess up and say, mea culpa. Okay.
I think the rest of the world is getting so much further ahead with AI than where we are because of our laws. So whether it's good or bad, can't comment on that, but we're being left in the dust.
Maybe we're still working on our basic intelligence.
Yes. That's a good comment.
Still working on our actual intelligence. We're not ready for our artificial intelligence. All right, so what do you think about this one, Rich?
Going to the cameras, I agree with you.
All right, so, motion.
Given
to-
the laws.
All right, so motion to accept ECAF, the version with our attorney's edits.
Seconded.
All right, all those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay.
You're not voting?
Oh, yeah, I was in favor.
Okay.
Yes, aye. So,
Okay.
2 in favor, no opposed. All right, unanimous. Okay. Anything for a future policy meeting? Where do we stand with
What did we
things?
I think there might be a couple coming up.
Yes, what was it? We just talked about it.
Physical restraint.
Is it what it is?
If the department updates their regulations regarding physical restraint, then we'll have to do that probably right at the end of the school year or right before we start the school year.
Jay, it was Jay, I looked it up, you were right. You didn't,
J,
Do we need to make a
Right on.
policy saying that we will not disclose any policies we may or may not have in regards to DEI?
I sent you an email about that.
I read the email. I read the email.
I
and,
think
you know,
Patrick Tutwiler was quite clear. You don't
so,
have to make any disclosures.
okay. I said not to, but when we lose the funding, we could just say we don't have any policies in regards to division, ejecting, or, interrogation.
Yes.
Because they just use the acronyms, they don't even know what words are there. So, all right, motion to adjourn? Unless anyone has an objection?
Second.
All right, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye, okay, we're adjourned.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you,
I'm not
guys.
used to seconding, but I'm the last.